Hi, I'm Malika Albrecht, and I'm really excited tonight to welcome you to our Thursday book launch. Tonight we are celebrating with Amy Small-McKinney. We've had an important discussion pre the recording, but I have no doubts that we will circle back around. This is Amy Small-McKinney's third chapbook, One Day I Am a Field, and that cover is just, to me, so perfect. So I look forward to hearing, if you don't mind holding it up, I look forward to hearing about how y'all chose that. Yeah, it's so evocative. Thank you, Nicole, too. We got multiple copies going up. Oh, that's awesome. Lyre Press came out 2022, was written over the course of her husband's illness and dying during COVID. It's important to note that this is something that she's given talks on. So for example, for the 2020 AWP, which was virtual, Amy co-moderated an interactive discussion, Writing Through Grief and Loss, the intersection of social and personal grief during COVID. So I am not going to do any more talking. I'm going to turn it right over to you. I want to remind people to please mute yourself if you're not already muted. And Amy, you will be our spotlight. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Malika, for having me. I'm honored. This is kind of a my Zoom launch of this chapbook. And it was written during COVID, during the isolation of COVID, and my husband's illness, decline, and finally death. And I was thinking about it today and thinking, how do I read this when, as a nation, we're grieving too? And this is such a personal grief book about myself as a caregiver, about the loss of my husband. And how do I it's almost felt indulgent to read it when the whole nation is grieving. But what you guys have said to me here makes me feel that that the link between the personal and the social grief is so strong, even during this time, that maybe it will resonate with someone. And so thank you so much. The book begins with 2 quotes by other poets, and I'd like to read that. And I forgot to time myself, so please sort of give me a. The first one is Lizelle Mueller from When I Am Asked. And placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would grieve with me. And the second quote is from Edward Hirsch from Gabriel. I did not know the work of mourning is like carrying a bag of cement up a mountain at night. I'm going to begin with the first poem of the book. And throughout this book, it's grief, but it's also talking about the difficult array of emotions that a caregiver can feel. The first poem is, the doctor said we need to return in 2 months after further testing, including blood work. How do I mourn a husband who sits beside me, who cannot remember doctor or diagnosis, who called me honey, held my hand. I could have held him all night, woke to memory the word dementia. I cannot close my eyes or hide. Who do I tell? What do I need to remember? My shoulders are mountains where a shepherd must stop. Her sheep hesitating, then moving upwards. They hate the dark. What to remember? On the top of the mountain, not a burning bush, a woman, ruins. Below, where sea stifles land, my body, a sunken ship, its ruins. I am drowning in remembering, in memory to be mindful of. I don't want to be. Want to forget alarms for medications, cups of water to be thickened so he doesn't misswallow into trachea or lungs. Forget legs as stems that barely hold him. Not remembering is venomous, a stonefish, unnoticeable, unremarkable at first, easily mistaken for polished stone. My shoulders are his mountains. I don't live in the mountains, never a shepherd. My city has its own steep cliffs of loss. This city, where I walk 2 blocks for apples, when the emergency dispatcher demands who is with him, the man on the floor, he remembered to push the emergency button. We are on our way. I am not a mountain or shepherd or sea. I'm on my way. Noir. My mother cried on her satin pillowcase. I never knew why. Want to move toward her wherever she is. Ask what darkness she could not crawl out of. There are things I will never know, though she told me I didn't hold you enough, uncomfortable with touch. When my daughter was born, I held her as a cloud holds on to rain as long as it can. Now my love on spoonbill legs, ribs butting out against skin wafer thin, unlocks his mouth when he naps, speaking for words lost to him. The painter Pierre Soulages said black is never the same from morning to afternoon to night and morning again. Like my body, dressing and undressing, I put a hand over my eyes until light lifts me toward another body, its leaves falling like falling from branches. It's ridiculous. We are not trees, though I want to be. And since skin on skin breaks open all sorrow, no, a turning away or fear of becoming him, I don't hold him enough. When no one is looking, I will walk into the painting, thick black shoots, unfastened trees in search of light. There's a prose poem in several sections, and I'm just going to read a few of the sections. It begins with an epigraph by the wonderful Jean Valentine from her poem, The Messenger. You were going to go without me. That was always your story. And I want to just warn you that in the second section that I decided to read, it does talk about the body during dying, and that can be, it's pretty hard stuff. And I decided to read it after a lot of thought. I hope this works out. Grief. Learning to roll and remove pea-soaked sheets from under a body isn't easy. Sometimes I pulled so hard you screamed out. To calm you, I used my motherly voice, stroked your forehead. The human body as dead weight. The body unable to stand or walk or lift itself. Reason and home disappearing. You were at the bank. You were reading rental ads. You wanted to be certain we'd live somewhere safe. You were not in our bedroom anymore. The shelves on the other side of the room that hold photos were not shelves. You told me, I am moving 3 over and 3 down. Or pointed to a photo of your dead parents and told our daughter they're playing pinochle. You told our daughter the exact number of your bridge master points, but insisted you still could walk. There are things about dying I didn't expect. How the dying stop pissing and shitting and then suddenly Whatever is left inside is released, flung out like birds from a rotting cage. How the dying will stop breathing, then a gasp again, open their eyes, then no breath, finally. It must be what is meant by taking a last gasp. It must be what is meant by birds on a wire before migration. And the last stanza of this long poem. In the car today, I asked you how I looked in my dress. I told you I don't want to live without you, and you took my hand. Air has its own shape. It is solid if you know where to look. It opens its doors if you know where to walk in. This is the place I love most.
I want you to read that last one again. I really do. That last little section about air has its own shape. I just.
Yes, thank you. In the car today, I asked you how I looked in my dress. I told you I don't want to live without you, and you took my hand. Air has its own shape. It is solid if you know where to look. It opens its doors if you know where to walk in. This is the place I love most.
Whew. Amy, thank you so much for reading. And I want to just keep hearing you go on, but I had to hear that section again. I just had to hear it.
Stop me whenever you want. I'm really moved.
Thank you. Thank you.
I should say that I should mention that I wrote this feverishly. And so maybe this is something I would want to tell John Amen, that during my husband's dying and COVID and isolation, I would write nonstop. It was like coming out of me. It was like streaming out of me. I didn't censor it. I had no clue what I was saying or what it was absolutely, I was in a fever. I would run from caregiving to do this. And it was just all I could do. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen at the end, if it was even a book or a journal. So I have to say that poetry saved my life during a COVID and this. So maybe that's partially an answer. So during, how much more time do I have?
Fine with whatever time you're willing to give us, but you know, I would go for another 15 minutes, you know.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. There was a time when I was truly in the mouth of the beast. The grief was, there was no logic left. I don't know if I ever want to go back to that particular place. And again, it was the social grief of COVID and isolation and having to bring them home so we wouldn't die alone. There was so many threads through this, socially and personally. But this one is just, there are two very simple ones that were written at the worst moment. And they're both called grief. Grief refuses to take a nap or look out the window at the ginkgo tree that gains and loses its leaves long after the others, or later at the wobbly moon so insanely determined. I cannot ask grief to go away, though I thought I could, as if that were enough. What if I cannot find a synonym for alive? What if and if nothing forever in one room, one? Grief. My body is a blade, nothing to annihilate but the self. My body refuses to sit still, rocks back and forth to its own deafening, vicious silence. I know how to laugh. Everyone thinks I am fine. Mouth as river vein, after all, returns blood to a heart. There's a poem called Again, and I was beginning to surface. Each stanza starts with a line from the incredible Sarah Vapp's book, Winter, and she has a poem in there, and I use one of her lines. Again, I can't stop thinking that I will never swim again. I have unlearned the strokes that keep my head above water. You held me above the wave while you sunk below. New love fire window will smack into the glass that protects me now that you are gone. That I am a gold yellow leaf, a leaf falling into the dumpster below, into guilt and confusion. I can't stop thinking that I will wake tomorrow not a leaf, but a bear, a weary bear, wandering into the wrong world, searching for a stream. I crouch over my cub, hold her, she will not drown. One day I am afield. It said that my internet was unstable, but now it's gone. Can you hear me? Everything's fine?
You're great now. There was a glitchy moment, but okay. I think we're on the other side of it.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. One day I am afield. Instantly, soundlessly, a meadow called, bereft. One day, a hawk's meadow. Above, a red-tailed hawk fools me into thinking he's an eagle, flaps his wings wildly, then glides until I know, yes, it is you. What is remembered when blinded? Try to wake to the sun's flash of denial. The problem? I am grief's land. One day I am a hollow. One day a long depression of land, a hollow carved out close to a river. You bring me rain, carried in your mouth as if I were a baby bird. You make many trips, squat beside me. There were never enough words between us. Before you leave, you cover me with birch bark, say, Amy, you are safe. What I want for you, to be a mountain bluebird escaping the blazing forest, or if you prefer, water running downhill, stretching into a river. I'm going to read either two more or three, some short ones, but this one is called Love/Furious. Not so cold that I want to stay indoors. Instead, that vacancy between fall and winter. The sidewalk here is crooked, broken, entire slices of cement missing. To walk, it is best to look down. I remember when I fell, my finger broken, my palm thickened with tangled branches that forced two fingers to bend as if looking away. Since he has died, I have awakened to a body broken, more damaged than I knew. The bones of my legs creak like floorboards. I can't find the body I knew before wipes, pills to save him, save him. I didn't hear my body ask me to look up, look at my mouth opposing itself, one side in a perpetual frown, the other still stupidly smiling. Why was the left side of my face shutting down, my eye closing, its lid covering half of the pupil? I did not see it. Or is this the divide between seasons? A caregiver's sleepwalk, the I am and I can't. I didn't hear my body ask me to look down, notice the purple bruise on my calf, notice the heavy wood bed frame I walked into. I must have been helping him tie his shoes or button his shirt or hanging on while he tried to stand. Or is this the divide? Loving, furious, afraid, furious. I wanted to pour myself into his spaces. I wanted to break from him like a rib. How many cells fit into love's nesting? And the last poem is called Without. It's the last poem of the book. And I stopped here. I have since written more poems, but I felt this is where it ended. This was where it had to end. I had to get this thing out into the world. Anything after this poem was my way of beginning to recover in a way as that is possible, as much of that as possible. But this, I didn't want closure from the book. There was none yet. Without. Where are you? Bird or air? Cloud of ice crystals? Or a random word like prayer, repeated as I check, recheck a locked door. Want to believe in grass's greener edges before they dry, leftover, busily fading, smothered in egret snow. I am a blade of doubt, though I want to say, oh, gorgeous. Want to say, if the next song is about love, I live another day.
Thank you. Y'all can unmute and clap. So she, it's so weird to have silence after a reading. I always feel like,
Wow.
we're clapping. We are. Oh, that was just exquisite. It was gorgeous. There are a
Beautiful.
lot.
Moving.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Much, everyone. I actually read some poems to you I haven't ever read because I knew they were like the one about the body, and I just didn't have the nerve to read those. And somehow, after we all talked about things about grief, I thought, okay, I'm going to just do that.
I'm so glad you did, because I think that, I don't know, you kind of answered the question we were talking about in the reading. At least hearing you read, that's what I felt. And there are some amazing messages to you in the chat section, which of course I'll send to you. If people want to ask questions or just comment, jump on in. We're pretty informal here.
Which I love.
I just want to say thank you. That was beautiful.
So much, Caroline. Caroline. Thank you so much.
Yeah, a lovely reading is what a lot of people are putting in here. It was very helpful to hear these poems, and I think it was so wonderful to hear them out loud. Wonderful reading, amazing. I mean, you just, and then the words and the phrases that resonated with people. I mean, a lot of us put the same thing at the same time. And then there's unique ones. I have unlearned the strokes that keep my head above water. What if I cannot find a synonym for alive? There's a lovely way that you move through poems. There's a presence, an authentic showing up that I think is part of the power. And then the sheer musicality of your work is gorgeous, and it's breathtaking, even when it's dealing with very difficult topics like the body as we die. And I think there was something in the way you approached it that also kind of answered that question of the role of art or poetry. So thank you.
I have a similar comment, Malika.
You know, the language was just gorgeous all the way through. I was completely drawn in and transported into the world that you inhabited. But I think there's different kinds of lyrical language in poetry. Sometimes it's in the service of imagery, the external world, and things like that. This was in the service of internal experience, of bringing the present moment into light, and just a presence and realness.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful kind of lyricism.
Thank you so much.
I would say also that as a person who has a mother going, my mother has dementia. So listening to your process and your feelings during this time really did a lot to affirm that this is not something that is peculiar just to me as a person, but that it is really something that so many people do experience. And I think, you know, kind of to piggyback on what the gentleman before said, it helps us not to feel alone.
Mhm.
And that is something that I believe is very important. You know, sometimes we don't even know what we're writing is going to do in the universe. We have no idea. But you know, it could very well be that what you write makes all the difference. And I think in this, you are doing that for so many people. So I applaud your, you know, your ability to write feverishly, because that's where truth is just found, I think, in those moments in which you can just release that, you know, prophetic in a way.
Thank you. And I hope you heard, I wanted to give myself permission as a caregiver, and I suppose others, to be angry and to be furious and to be exhausted and not to be able to go on. And it's so often, you know, people say, oh, you're so strong, or, oh, this is God's will. What? And you just think, well, there's a whole array of feelings, love, fear, and I wanted that. I hoped that was a gift to other caregivers. I don't think I was conscious of it, but now that you say it, I'm hoping.
It was actually that love furious that I wrote that in the chat.
I'm so glad you heard that. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I was going to say, and actually Nina just put in there, love furious. It is so relatable. Yes, it is a gift to us all. And I think any of us, you know, my mother had early onset Alzheimer's, and definitely felt that. And Regina, something that you said, it's a unflinching authenticity that you hear in the poems. And I think that is really powerful. And something also that you said, Amy, about, you know, these poems saved my life, writing these, you know, I was on fire, and there's a truth, but I also am hearing other people say what you wrote has meaning to them currently, applicable, immediate. And I think that's a very important thing to reflect back, because you were saying it's very personal. And yes, this is your personal journey. And I know, you know, I come from second wave feminism, so I'm going to say the personal is political.
Yes, I do too. Actually, I should have said that, because me too.
Yeah, you know, that's my school of thought. But we're seeing it here, you know, that the personal is also relatable because of that unflinching authenticity. And it's hard not to get swept up by the sheer craft of your work and the exquisite choices of language. But underneath all of that is a very powerful, important message that obviously is making a difference in other people's lives. Yeah, see, Nina said, Nina, can you read this? Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think what's amazing about Amy's work in this book is that the language really mirrors the emotion. So there's the lifting that leaping that Ronald was talking about, like that lyricism of that leaping, but it's anchored and it returns, and it's the emotion too of that lifting out of the body and then returning to that space of the beloved's body and the self body, because there's also the self that's moving through this process too. So what I love so much is how the language echoes the emotional movement through the piece. So you feel that tension of being tethered and lifting and tethered and lifting, and that is just consistent throughout the book in this amazing way, and the repetition of things like grief, and returning to that, so you feel the weight of it, and then lifting out into like moving in the boat and pushing into the water. Just really brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the way you call it the tethering and that back and forth. That's fabulous, Nicole. I did want to return to what Nina said here in the chat section. My husband died of Alzheimer's, and I absolutely felt love, furious, and I didn't know I was allowed. You're saying helps because it helps people know it is allowed because it is real. And that's very powerful. Thanks for writing that, Nina. So there's your answer, Amy.
Just want to mention that actually it's weird because I didn't say it about poetry, but in life, I'm always saying the personal is political. I mean, that's my, and especially, I'll just say these days, personal is political. And always, every day, I mean, we can every day from through history, personal is political. Just that for me, personal, anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is I say that and believe it. But I guess this is the first time, even though I did the AWP on social and personal intersection, I'm not sure I believed my poems were doing that. And I think you guys made me look at this differently. Thank you.
They're so powerful. I went through a process of grief differently for years, and I didn't even know I was in it until I got out of it. So a lot of this makes sense, and I was able to come out of it, and poetry also helped me release all these anxieties and traumas and stuff that I'd gone through. So thank you.
And also, going back to the conversation we had before you started, Amy, I think everything that you said in your poems was for a particular condition, but I think it applies to any grief, and particularly, the grief that we're feeling today about the shootings and stuff like that. Because when you think of it, it's all like tied together. You can see in both COVID and the shootings, how the sins of the father have been laid on the heads of the children, kind of thing. That we're doing it to ourselves as a human race, and that's part of the sadness and part of the frustration of it. That kind of patriarchal lineage that creates all these conditions that we have to, and particularly in America, where it didn't need to be as bad as it was for COVID. So with our leadership at the time. So, all these things are connected, in my opinion, and it's not just about COVID. It goes beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, George Floyd's killing. We go on Breonna Taylor. I mean, just goes on and on and on. And then this, 19 little babies. And we're doing it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves.
We are.
Yeah. I think what put me thinking about it was I read that the school teacher's husband died of a heart attack today. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh,
And I just was undone by that. I still am.
That's so sad.
They leave behind, I think it's 3 or 4 kids. The youngest is, or the oldest is 13. I mean.
Oh, is that true? The oldest is 13? I didn't know their ages.
Yeah, it's either the oldest or the youngest. I can't remember right now, but it was just the idea that her husband died of a heart attack. And I can't imagine how, you talk a lot about the embodiment of grief. And I think that we don't sit long enough to think about where, I mean, grief sits in our body. This is along the lines again of trauma theory of where the body remembers, the body keeps score. Where do we hold this? Where do you carry?
You know,
That 13-year-old is going to run head on into love furious and have no idea what to do with it, and probably internalize it, and that 13-year-old's body is going to keep an unnecessary score.
Yeah. And Nicole, did you know how old the kid was? You said it was the older teacher's husband. They were high school sweethearts.
Yeah, that's all I know. And they have like 4 children, I think.
Yeah, it was 4 children, like 3 or 4 children.
Yeah.
I think it might be the youngest was 13 instead of the oldest, and that makes more sense maybe.
Yeah, I think so. They were married for 24 years, I think.
Somebody had a quote, probably Facebook or something, about and this may not sound like it applies, but it resonated for me. The people who threw stones at Ruby Bridges now don't want our children to read that they threw stones at Ruby Bridges. And I was very moved by that, because I thought, I think part of what's happening to us, and maybe even to people, I know people who have not stopped grieving years and years, and everybody has their own process. Everyone takes as long as they need. And I've run some bereavement groups, and I believe that. I'm not just saying it. But what I've noticed is when you don't look at yourselves deeply, you don't really look at what your behavior is, and you want to sort of ban and censor. We just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And here we are, mourning again.
Yeah. I think that's a very important thing to say, Amy. And I think that's, that unflinching authenticity of being self-aware. Or we could go back to the quote, those who, do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. If we can't be accountable in our lives for our errors, however grievous they may be, we're not authentic and we can't fix things. And I think that takes a kind of a courage and also a sense of community that supports us in being accountable and going forward. So,
go
ahead.
I think it's interesting that I think that with all that has gone on as it relates to gun violence, as it relates to issues surrounding even things like race and all of what we're, and the disparities that exist, I feel in my spirit that like we're on the verge of some type of revolution. I don't know how we'll get, how it will turn out. I don't know what it looks like. I had to stop watching A Handmaid's Tale because in my mind that's what it was looking like. But I do know that in the civil rights movement, there was a whole cavalcade of people and entities that made that happen. And very many of them were artists. I think about the songs, I think about the poetry, I think about everybody had a place in that. There had to be, there had to be people to fill in those spaces. And sometimes I think what we write, sometimes I write and I say, what am I writing for? And sometimes I try very hard to find an answer. But this morning I woke up, like, very many of you probably woke up, and that was in the front of my mind, what is happening right now. And I wrote a poem that had no answer. It was just very much you know, just this reflection of this is what I feel. And maybe like these poems that we've heard tonight, that will be something that people will be able to connect to and not feel alone and be encouraged in not being alone.
I don't think I can love you anymore, Regina. Just do.
Oh, bless you. I love you, Malika. Oh.
We're going to definitely have to come back to that idea of impact and writing poems that don't have answers. That's sticking with me right now. Want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to go ahead, Ron.
I liked what you just said, poems that don't have answers, because almost everything that we said in the last hour or so are statements that have no answers. And in a way, I mean, that's real wisdom, is the questions are more important than the answers. You know, the wondering is more important than the certainty and so on. And I think that's what poets are about. And even if we go to hell in a handbasket in the next 5 or 10 years, and some kind of like explosive, you know, revolutionary time happens, we're keeping alive what can rebuild, you know, what if things settle down. Or at least what they send off into a space station to tell them that we did exist here at one point, you know, into outer space.
Thank y'all very much. Does anybody have any other thoughts or questions? I do want to leave a little bit of time if somebody would like to read something, so that, you know, we hear your voices today as well.
I was hoping I'd hear some poems at an open mic from you guys.
I do have one. If you don't
Fabulous,
mind,
Regina. We'd love to hear it.
And I actually thought about it as you were reading, that whole concept of the air. And I wrote a poem entitled "The Air Bears Witness." The air bears witness, air, shaped breath of divinity, fuel of humanity, a silent, sentient ambassador. Indeed, utterance, mobility, laughter, love, all require air. Ever present, sustainer of life, respect due, respect due. And yet on these todays, yea, even from the beginnings of days, air bears ugly witness to the first whispers of dishonored death. Death signaled by raised eyebrows, tears, anger, fears, agitated spirits that tell darkened, depraved minds that there is indeed no other way. Air stares soundlessly as thoughts break through cracked lips, words traveling on its currents into ears of waiting co-conspirators, or simply float, then sink back into skin to settle and harden in the minds that conceived it, and the hearts that believe that breath disrupted is the only way to take control of these uncertain times. Air is obliged to be pulled in and out of lungs, irrespective of the evil, of the good. Air is there shifting uneasily when the brute punches straight through her face and breaks her teeth, blood pouring from the spaces underneath, indiscreet. Air is there wildly uncomfortable when insanity, profanity, corruption, brutality meet in alleyways and leave mothers planning and digging graves. Air is there when the clamoring mob says, let's catch one unaware, and air conspires with fire and watches as they bring the rope and tie it tightly on wearied feet that have tried to run, dragging life down dark roads and pop-up sundown towns. Air sees tracks of blood relentlessly circle this place from age to age, circle this place. Air sees it all, trapped in even the most unholy, the most undignified rooms, makeshift tombs. While bright air's charge is to sustain the flesh in this domain, man's refrains of violence and misery savagely redirect its mission, and air remains to give testimony, eternal testimony. For air is divinely compelled, righteously compelled to stoically bear witness to it all.
Ooh, Regina.
Powerful.
That poem fits powerfully into this whole conversation in so many ways. Thank you so much for reading that.
Thank you for listening.
Mhm. It just became like this widening, every widening net, bringing in all of it.
Well,
Caroline? Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Did I
Yeah.
misread?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Is it okay if I read? It's funny because air and breath is also in this poem as well.
Okay, and then we'll go to Anne after that. Okay,
Sorry.
jump in. You're fine, Caroline.
The lighthouse. Let's climb the spiraling stairs and follow the sneaky seagull's footprints as the sun spreads its saffron strings beyond the ionized air to bring our souls in tune. Let's revel in an oceanic cleanse and observe the widening trail as the whirling surf kite wings beyond the boardwalk to nourish our relationship. I want us to spin the sky with salty kisses and gather up the sand from the dunes before to summon the seahorse-shaped branch and the memories of floating bellies. I want us to become breathless with echoes of conscience left behind, the scattered seashells to awaken the rhythm of poetic drumming and cast tubular clouds away from the tides. We can witness the wind waving at the shrunken sailboats as we swirl upwards. The dim light leads us through 180 stairs. We can ascend the isolation, swaying atop the mist as we emerge on this new path, absorbing beacon orbs of the lighthouse.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Anne, I saw that you had, yes.
Yes, hi. Let's see. Well, I have one that is all about memory. Silver blue egg. You reappear as a silver blue egg, enamel or jelly, frightening relation to wind, stinging under wings. You come as a cluster of eggs nested in the dusty attic of a bar. The bar is called Time. My city really has a bar called Time, with the dark upstairs, cliched setting for memory, head-on blast above a field. But you reappear as an egg or cluster on the wooden planks of Time, the bar, and I don't know what to do with you. Sudden vision of ocean makes all dangers possible, or if it's really you, or if it was ever you, or a place I needed to be for a while, or a boat with your face's figurehead on the prow, the sun and octopus who swallowed fire.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anne. A lot of magical twists and turns in that one. Nicole, you said you had one too?
Yeah, sure. This is a little longer, but it ties in what we've been talking about. It's called a rubric for their suffering. When my children were small, I'd ask like the nurse, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the level of your pain? Or what is the need measured in hugs, or sometimes jelly beans? No, not 100, something more reasonable. We must learn to regulate despite the contradictions. It's more complex now, this rubric. How close are you to the fire from walking into the sea? Assembling a strategy, one might respond, and the other exceeding expectations. Can you open the window? Is there a lifeboat nearby? The window is painted shut, but I have a hammer, one says. The other, only a tire. What else? What else? I can climb out on the fire escape, throw confetti. I can draw a perfect sun and eat a salami sandwich. It'll have to do. I have to stay up with Dostoevsky and the dusky sky like in a Whistler painting. In high school, my son had a teacher with a sign taped to her desk that read, "In life, there are no makeup tests." It was peeling at the edges. On conference days, I peeled a little more, like at a scab. The teacher practiced law, but gave it all up for them. It had to be a calling. My daughter calls home in the middle of the night in her first month of college when a hallmate overdoses. They're in lockdown. Is everything okay? She asks. The policeman poking her head out of the door like a mother herself. No, it's not. Get back in your room. This is not for you to see. Which one is it? The boy whose shoes are too big so that he looks like he's always walking through puddles? She wonders. He can't come back. No second chance. His mouth like coal, hardened with a million years of light. From the window, she watches him hoisted into darkness, sealed in a bag like laundry. The police knock on the doors, say, "Don't go it alone." Another one is crying. Maybe he was the one who had prepared for this, who pressed his mouth against the boy's with all his weight, like saving his own brother. "How are you feeling?" I asked. She says, "Like never before."
Thank you, Nicole. Wow. I'm glad we had time for open mic because we needed all those voices in there. I did want to make a reminder that in the chat section, there's a direct link to buy Amy's book. And Amy, if somebody wanted to get an autograph copy, is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think Ron has his hand up. I just noticed that.
Oh, good. Thank you. I did see that.
But yeah, I'd be happy to send one. I guess it means I can give you my email, basically. I might as well do that. And
Okay.
unless
Or people could go through Facebook if that works, or
if you go on
email.
Facebook, friend me, and I'll be happy to. You can message me. Absolutely, that would be fabulous. But anyway, I just noticed Ron, so I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, Ron, your hand was up and I didn't even see it. If Amy hadn't said something, I was clueless. I thought you were waving.
I guess I don't know. I don't know how to use that. I don't know whether you just raise your hand. It's different for each one.
That is what you're supposed to do.
That's right. Okay. So this is called at 2 a.m. at the Greensboro Super 8. Out in the clattering hall, they bellyache. We didn't do nothing wrong, but the officer drones his commands. The good old boys grumble, engines on idle. And the band of white light at the bottom of my door dims 3 times. The elevator clonks shut and second floor sleepers slump into silence like families slipping back into the storm cellar. I press into my pillow, dumbstruck by those 2 old boys. Just up from Rockingham, they bragged. Night of Thunder, they hollered. Jimmy Johnson and Dale Jr., they play acted. Blindsided and cold cocked their room, propped the door with 6-packs of tall boys. The party moves into the hall. Where be the girls? Where's the bar people? This ain't Rockingham, dude. Pop a can and hand it here, Junior. Open that bag of Doritos, man. My room spins south, down the motorway toward NASCAR country, past their Dodge Charger galloping north to restart the Civil War, cool cans between their legs. My southbound bed pulls up to neighboring single wides, down a little from the speedway where the boys came from. 2 mothers rise from their pillows, walk to a crib and lift, each into her own slumbering arms, a child wet and wailing, whispering, "Shush, little dumpling, shush." I drift again and my pillow flies north to Philly. Too many years and miles ago, after the divorce, the apartment complex where my inconsolable daughter rises up to meet her mother's hopeless eyes, worlds away from whatever pit stop I'm at.
Mm. Wow, thank y'all so very much. Thank you, Ron. I'm really glad that y'all were here today. And Amy, I just perfect timing. I will send the chat section so you can read all the comments.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. This was one of the best Zoom readings I've ever had. And I think you're just so generous and honest, and I'm very moved.
Oh, that's how we're feeling about you.
Yeah, I agree. You're wonderful, Amy.
Really beautiful.
Not always, but so Hachi.
Be well, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Good night.
So much. I'm looking forward to the chat. Thank you.
You are so welcome. My pleasure.